voice of an angel singing to me at night. I hear an angel laughing, his voice is clear and bright. The angel's wings unfold, wrap around my soul, and time is gone away. Floating through the night, a sparkle in his eye. No longer can I stay. A kiss and then I'm gone. Time is only memory. Wonderful memories. And the dream is over, the final curtain call. The sun is setting now, for the very last time, time and time again. It's the beginning. So, welcome here in our Spreaker class or in that class of the Voice from Heaven. And I don't know if the picture is working on YouTube or not, otherwise we're just here with sound and it's the beginning, as we just heard in this wonderful song of Mitch, and also a kiss and you're gone, right? It is just one moment of opening up from let's say the restrictions or this self-control within the human ideas of how to fall in love, or maybe how to stay in defense. And in truth is you're kissing Christ and you're gone, and you're gone. You find yourself in the light, you find yourself in a state of mind beyond perception. And every time that we do share such memories that are in context with meanings that we have given them, meanings that were taken in, let's say, in a limited way, in a limited sense, and meanings that through that limitation brought us death, are now the remembrance of Christ within. And we are bringing it home in that recognition that Christ I am, Christ walks with me, Christ is here, Christ is present, Christ is everything. And this is why forgiveness is so important. And as we are guided in the mind training series, because before we are stepping into 3 days to awakening, and we'll share some ideas coming from this just recently published book, 3 Days to Awakening. And it is the first volume of three of those 3 actions of mind. The day one, looking for a way out of here. We are definitely sharing our experience with the lesson of the day, that review lesson of lesson 192, that we have all a function that God would have us fill. You, brother, as me, we have a function. You have a function. I have a function that God would have me fill. You have a function God would have you fill. And it is a function of seeing in a true way, of going beyond perception, going beyond judgments, going beyond limited meanings that we have given ourselves and everyone and everything in the world. And that is what we're coming closest to the light of heaven through an experience of forgiveness. Because as he expresses it in the lesson itself, 192, we really have no freaking idea what creation is. We cannot conceive of creation in this world within the conceptual mind, within the giving meaning to the meaningless. We cannot conceive of creation of heaven at all, because in the conceptual mind, where separation is perceived, where separation is held real or defended as a reality, there is no meaning to creation. There is no meaning. It has no meaning here, he says. But it is forgiveness that comes closest to it. And that is why we are offered innumerable opportunities to practice here on earth within the dream. And yeah, for sure, for coming to a renewal in our self-recognition. As Jesus says, every time a brother wakes up, this is my awakening. Every time a brother goes home, goes into the light, remembers who he is, this is my awakening. And of course, creation doesn't really have a form, since neither forgiveness, because we can use every form, any form, because it is given from out of time. He calls it heaven born, born in heaven. So it has no form at all. It is just experienced innumerably in all kinds of forms. But always remember, the form is just the medium for arriving at the experience, for the remembrance who we are and what it is all about. So this lesson, I have a function God would have me fill, is an instruction in the remembrance how important forgiveness has become. And there is no forgiveness, and this is what I will then share with you going into the text of the book, without a change of perception, without a willingness to go beyond perception. And these wonderful words is given by Christ's mind, that forgiveness looks gently upon all things unknown in heaven and sees them disappear, and leaves the world a clean and unmarked slate on which the word of God can now replace the senseless symbols written there before, is really already saying everything that we would need to know about how that works. So to see everything that is devoted to separation, to being here in an appearance, in a body, in a world, as something special or something better, is really just seen disappearing. Whenever you see things disappear, be very grateful, because it leaves your world a clean and unmarked slate on which now the thought of creation, he calls it here the Word of God. That is the light thought of your mind that can now replace the senseless symbols written there before. And so we acknowledge that forgiveness is the means by which all that had value within that state of separation is overcome, is undone in our mind. So when we speak about separation, there is fear in the consciousness, and the utmost fear is the fear of losing one's control of self, which is the fear of death. In truth, as what Jesus teaches us in the Course, it is the fear of the light is the fear of love. It is the fear of what what is abstract but completely real. You might be afraid of the peace of God and not really see that you have given a means to overcome that. And that means is forgiveness. Why is that so? Because it holds no fierce attraction now and guilt is gone. Forgiveness lets the body be perceived as what it is. And what the remembrance for this last 20 lessons of the first part of the workbook of A Course in Miracles, that undoing part, practicing, taking with us this idea I am not a body, I am free, for I'm still as God created me, to see that forgiveness lets the body be perceived as what it is, a simple teaching aid, a means for teaching, and to be laid by when learning is complete, but hardly changing him who learns at all. So once you have no use anymore of means because the lesson is learned, that means that you are fully aware that none of what you perceive, none of what you experience is actually here, has any meaning, has any reality. Then you have learned that one lesson that every human mind has to learn and has come for here into the world to learn. And then you have used that teaching aid, that simple teaching aid, idea of forgiveness, to perceive the body as it is, because then you perceive it as that tool that you use for communication, that you use in order to experience forgiveness beyond expressions, beyond appearances, simply leading you to your whole mind, leading you into the light. It restores the peace that God intended for you because you are His Holy Son. And these are expressions that Jesus gives us in this lesson and makes it even stronger because He says, only forgiveness can restore the peace that God intended for His Son. Only forgiveness. This is your way out. You cannot live without forgiveness. Only forgiveness can relieve the mind of thinking that the body is its home, that the body would have its own separate value, reality. Only forgiveness can relieve you in your mind of that way of thinking. And only forgiveness can persuade you to look again upon your own holiness, your oneness with Him, and so with all of you, with all your brothers, because we are one. And therefore, we do not sacrifice the body or give up anything that we already realized is nothing. Yeah, we are one, therefore we give up nothing. But we have indeed been given everything, and we have it been given by God Himself. We don't need to become one through one world idea, one theory or directive given politically, socially, religiously. We are one because we are created one, because this is what we realize who we are as oneself. So there's no becoming that. It cannot be within or towards working for a process and then you can undergo that experience now, and you can only now in this very moment realize with me who you are and what is really going on in your mind, speaking nothing special but everything in heaven and what is in that sharing and extension of light thought going on. Yeah, and yet we do need forgiveness to perceive that this is so, isn't it? So these are wonderful words given us by Christ mind Jesus in this workbook of A Course in Miracles, this second part of A Course in Miracles, and giving us side indications also in this remembrance that how important forgiveness is, to simply remember not to hold anyone prisoner, because you would just hold yourself acted and guided to always free up ourselves, free up our minds, and release, give freedom to our brothers, give freedom to all minds to experience themselves in the peace or on the way home. Release instead of binding them, release them instead of making them dependent on you. And it is exactly that way that you are made free, that you will experience that you are already free, that you remember that you always have been free. This is the simple way of our going home of salvation itself. So, once again, thank you so much for this words from out of time that we share right now. And in that sharing, we remember the truth for ourselves. Yeah. Your brother as yourself is as God created him, and so are you. You are what he is. Therefore, forgive him now. Forgive him what he never really did. And you will see that you are one with him. So, as I was already mentioning it at the very beginning, this is all about going beyond perception and going back to this manuscript, to this book of 3 Days to Awakening, which is already available on Amazon by Devavan and subtitled Day One Looking for a Way Out of Here. More information you can find on my blogspot on devavan.blogspot.com. And we were in the last episode looking at this course passage in chapter 3 in the fifth section and left it somewhere in the seventh or eighth paragraph. And with that recognition and acknowledgement that revelation cannot be explained, that was like the last thing that we had. Nah? And so that to recognize this light everywhere, and so we know it universally. This is really what is offered us, and therefore revelation cannot be explained because it is knowledge. So always remember, what is knowledge is from God, comes from God. It has nothing to do how we think in an idea of cause and effect in our human mind, or in relationship, or in connection with human ideas. Knowledge is purely knowing what we are as God created us. And that means we know perfectly who we are, and we know perfectly everyone, and knowing perfectly everyone within my mind is the recognition of uh, who I am, who that I am is. Revelation simply happens. The revelation to have a full experience of that, to be immersed in that truth, is not something that we can do, or we can develop, or we can practice for, or we can forgive good enough for. No, revelation happens when the mind is ready. Revelation is occurring when there is no projecting of limited thought forms anymore upon anybody or anything that is still uh, seen as the world. If you lose all your judgment, if you lose all the meaning that you have given to this word, then you basically are looking at a clean slate, at an empty screen, right? On which now the light can project, maybe at the very end, still some forms of light, but finally only light itself. And this is what we are and who we are and what we discover. So revelation happens, it is the only really natural happening because it reflects the nature of God. This is where we left it last time. It's the only really natural occurrence. And as long as perception lasts, prayer has a place. And a nice expression is a human being is anyway just a praying animal. Ne? And so we are kind of, we have educated ourselves to pray for everything that we wanted or we had need for. And it is through this guidance with the Course in Miracles who teaches us, no, this is not really about, this is not determining what prayer is for. Prayer is this contact, to come to this contact with God. This is this active communication from myself to my Creator, and to ask Him for that light strength, for that power of mind to see things exactly as they are, to see and recognize the truth in everything. But here, first, on the level of perception, let's see what Jesus is offering us in this chapter 3 about this expression that as long as perception lasts, prayer has a place. Since perception rests on lack, those who perceive have not totally accepted that atonement and given over themselves to truth. Perception is a separated state, and the perceiver does need healing. Communion, not prayer, is the natural state of those who know God and His miracles are inseparable. You see, here is this word communion introduced, né? That the perceiver does need healing. And so this is on the level of perception because perception is where a separated state of mind is. And the one who is perceiving it, to whom the perception comes, who sees something and thinks he knows now what it is, of course, such a mind, that human mind needs healing. But communion, not prayer, as a natural state of those who know, because communion is the outcome of knowledge itself, of knowing. God and His miracles are inseparable. All words at best are preparatory. The word is really a thought. No one word, now word capitalized, is universally meaningful because a word is a symbol, but thought is not divisible by creation. The original name for thought and word was the same. So that is nice to know and to learn also maybe. And we even know from the old Greek or Greek philosophers that's mostly explained in that way, and also from Aramaic how Jesus spoke in 2000 years ago. There are other meanings given that actually teach us, like here, that the original name of thought and word was the same. So the quotation should read, in the beginning was the thought. Remember John 1, at the beginning was the word. Ne? And the thought was God. Here, thought capitalized, of course. And the thought was God. How beautiful indeed are the thoughts of God who live in His light. Ha. So once again, in the beginning was the thought, and the thought was with God, and the thought was God. How beautiful indeed are the thoughts of God who live in His light. Your worth is beyond perception because it is beyond doubt. That's where our worth is in God's mind. Yeah, it is set beyond perception because it is beyond doubt. It is beyond the possibility of a meaning in separation, in littleness, in limitation. Do not perceive yourself in different lights. Know yourself in the one light, where the miracle which is you is perfectly clear. What a directive, what a guidance, isn't it? Know yourself in the one light, where the miracle which is you is perfectly clear. So, this was now part of the 10th paragraph in the fifth section of chapter 3. Now, I have here some commentary to that, which I want to share with you and take it right out of the book and just go with it. And as I used to do it, just comment it or however it comes in my mind. So whenever the identification with the senses ceases, when you're freed up basically from that meaning and from that reality of your identification with your sense organs and with that what you perceive with your senses, then is non-attachment complete. That word non-attachment, we remember, is also very much part of the teaching in Buddhist tradition, so also in Hinduism. And we know also that non attachment, especially in context with the body or with body identification, is part of our transformative experience within our mind. So, whenever the identification with the senses has an end, non attachment will be experienced as complete. And the body and its senses, we remember that, are thoughts in themselves. And the body and its senses are, in that sense, in that understanding, really those indicators, those helpers, so that we can learn that, the means. The body is wholly neutral. I don't know if everybody of us who is listening now can does already know that. Of course, teachers of God who are with the Course in Miracles for a long time or are um, are active in the mind training with the Course in Miracles, it's not a new idea. But even in utilizing Eastern philosophy, Eastern ways, this is quite a new way. The body is wholly, completely neutral and does what the mind commands. So we are directed to the change in the mind if we want to experience a change on that level of perceiving what's going on with the body or in the body. The body is wholly neutral, does what the mind commands, and sense perceptions. Perceptions are thoughts in the mind that have no real cause. That is very important to emphasize because the cause is only our self made self concept of which God doesn't know. That's why it is not real. And and just that we understand also what we are making and making up by ourselves is really just he calls it in other sections hallucination. It's really just the hallucinating. So everything that has to do with perception, sense perception, you should know that you are talking about something or that you are sharing with someone something that has no real cause. And without a thought process in the mind, senses have no meaning whatsoever. And so you can consider sense perceptions as nothing but notions of the mind, or more precisely, as parts of a past residual expression that are relived in the appearance of the world. You see, it's all just taken along with because the meaning was still there, taken from the past experiences, and then reapplied, reprojected, and again believed to be real. But that is this reliving in the appearance of the world. It's still just an appearance, it's still a dream image. The attempt to identify and define one's identity, your true identity, right? Who you are within a human condition as a body. What determines a body? No? A body is being subject to, let's say, sickness, aging, and death. No? By not limiting yourself, your consciousness as being a sense perceiving individual or person, you will get straight to the core of perception and that which is left to truly perceive. And you will find out if there is anything left there to perceive anything of the dream. Like this is where you bring what you perceive back to who is the perceiver, in whom does this occur, in whom is that image perceived and seen or recognized. But on the way, you will have to face all your self made demons, all your self made limited meanings, which are of fear, which are fear and guilt thoughts. Because the reason is you were afraid, or you still are afraid of literally everyone and everything that comes into your mind and offers you a reflection of your true self. Because you see, there's a totality in that. There's only light there. No? And so the first reaction of the ego will be to reject it, to deny it, or to say, I don't see that, or I don't experience that. It is an expression of that being afraid of your own savior, of that reflection of the light within your own mind, reflecting your true self. Yeah? Because you believe that the perceived reflections are outside yourself. Yeah. So you're afraid of being healed. You're afraid of being saved. You're afraid of going home, right? You feel threatened by these reflections because you believe in your perceptual and judgmental mind. And this is the human design. This is your human design. And if you are already in the action and experience of overcoming this fear of your brother, of your savior, of these reflections of light, then you're very much blessed. And it comes exactly in your work or in your conscious work of overcoming this human design. So you have to deny this condition in its entirety ultimately, in order to recognize your true self. None of this can stay the same, or none of this is really offering you what makes your recognition of being saved and being able to save. I remember here that of my own story of being a spiritual seeker at these times. And at times, spiritual seekers come across true reflections in the dream, right? Perceptions that reflect God's light, God's love, right? And it doesn't really need to be in form of a human being. It could be anything, but everybody, especially those who consciously seek for a solution, come across those reflections within their own transformative dream and dreaming. And such reflections may be seen, for example, as an awakened mind, or as meetings of minds joined in the sharing of an experience of light. That would be like the circle of atonement, as we are sharing it in sessions where we come together, in meditations, in active meditations with music. So in wherever we come together, wherever we join, because joining is in the mind and not in the word, as we already said, there we see such reflections. Yeah? And when this occurs for that individual as the seeker, he must face his fear of this light, because that will come up right away. Yeah. The threat it poses in causing him to release all his imaginary thoughts, perceived objects, all his old perceptions, including himself as the perceiver. So anything that is in that bag that is brought along, all the past, right? The entire past is felt for a moment threatened in that it will disappear, that it will be it will be undone. And of course, it is undone. And therefore, it needs some training that the mind can learn not to feel threatened. Yeah. That's quite an advance within transformation, when the mind realizes that, wow, I really have nothing to fear, and it is just great and okay, fully okay with me to lose this bag of the past, of all these imaginary thoughts and experiences and all the meanings that make up or determine the world I see. If he, as the perceiver, is believed to be real, all reflections of the thoughts or images of his mind must also be seen as real. The witnessing of evaluative differences or making of comparisons then are assigned as being true functions of the various sense perceiving faculties, sight, sound, touch, etc. Yeah. Or yeah, being true, under quote, being true functions of those various sense faculties. But let us look as well at well-known illustration within the Eastern teachings that exemplifies the faultiness that occurs with these sense perceptions. That of the picture of, and you might have heard about it, the picture of coming across a rope that is identified in the false perception as a snake. No? It is like within the conceptual meaning a rope, but it is experienced as a snake, no? Because it has the same appearance. No? So, and we can demonstrate that in our reflection of that without having any image you have given meaning to your perceptions or are valueless. Ne? That is really what we learn. But in the experience, there's value in the potential to convert what was formerly fearful to the truth, ne? Because you will probably, most probably, react if you come across a snake fearfully. Ne? But then in that experience of that conversion, it is really coming to the truth that in truth never is fearful, no? Which cannot be fearful. So it means that your experience here in the world only has value in its converting potential, in that potential, how you convert uh, your thoughts and what you perceive, as you perceive here the snake or the rope or both, or it will, that's the value, is when you can overcome that meaning, change that meaning in your mind. So seeing this rope, you look at this rope, you see this rope, and you might immediately express fear and thus justify your separation, right? This is what the reaction of fear does. It's a justification of, I'm a body and this is now threatened. This snake could kill me. So there's a reaction of fear. Having made this observed object out as being a real threat, you have literally chosen fear over peace, which is your true nature, right? We are reviewing that right now so that you come to understand how your actions of mind, how your mind works in this context, and how you consciously choose your feelings, or you choose a thought of separation, or the basis of that separation is your experience of fear. And so you would choose fear over peace. Yeah. But remember that it is the will of God, God's will for you to be eternally at peace, right? And to be happy. So once you give it a moment and you stand still, this is what we practice, this is what we learn, standing still, you will start um, having all these things from a different perspective. It becomes relative, right? You will start laughing at, at what you see. You will start laughing. You know those situations. You laugh basically at yourself. How could you see that? How could you believe this is a snake when it reveals itself to be a rope, right? So you can start laughing about yourself that you took that rope for a snake. No? But without changing your mind in a systematic way, you will simply proceed further with your little understanding of your meaningless world and its contrasts, not having learned the lesson. And what if you are then told and instructed that the snake you have seen creeping across the road, which you were afraid of, was just a piece of rope that the neighbor's kids pulled across the street with an invisible string? Or the sound coming from another room, which was undoubtedly heard as your partner's voice speaking to you, was just a voice sounding out of the TV. I have such experiences, of course. This is when we touch and have moments of realizing, oh my God, I'm completely deluding myself. I'm deceiving myself with those meanings I give to them, because they are actually not connected to what they are. So how do you process such perceptual illusions? That's what they are called, isn't it? What about your observations of a professional performance of illusions and magic? You believe them to be real for an instant until you correct them with another reference of perceptions you make, another judgment. And then you respond in the way you believe is reasonable logically, yet the result of your controversial observations, which merely proves that even your own sense perceptions are nothing but delusions. And you want to take that with you from this class that we are sharing right now, that your own sense perceptions are nothing but delusions. Yet you never doubt the reality you have given your perceptions. And you see already here is an indication. Jesus asks us to question all the reality that we have given our perceptions. No? And that is one of the biggest mistakes if we don't do that, if we do not question them, if we do not doubt that meaning that you ever made and might still make. How could you come to know God and His kingdom unless you start, and here it is, questioning your perceptions in your dream? This is essential. This is very, very important that we arrive at questioning thoughts, our perceptions in our own dream. You have taken this dream of death for real and questioned instead the love that God has for you. Right? And say, well, I can see that. It's abstract, so maybe it's not really here. Maybe it doesn't really exist. So, this is what we are learning through miracle mindedness, to acknowledge what our eyes cannot see, but know them as real, and to question everything that is transitory and is part of our perceptual mind. So, are you aware that by perceiving this world as you think you see it, you're perceiving nothing but your insane ideas of death? What is restraining you from questioning the reality of your ancient decisions to grow old, decay, and die? And even if you realize that this misperceiving and not questioning your promises and interpretations is your problem, you still do not know what the solution to your problem is. So you see, this still needs revelation, because knowledge and revelation, as we were just starting it from chapter 3, is really going hand in hand. You do not know it because first an untrained mind cannot see the solution which is already given. Your mind seeing all these things needs to be changed to develop the ability to listen to the voice for God within yourself. Secondly, you believe that there is a real solution here for your real problem. What you learn by experiencing through the release of your false identity is that there is no solution to your problem here within your human condition in time space, because the problem is not real, because how we identified the problem, how we perceived the problem, what we thought the problem is, just comes out of this bag of meanings from the past, right? So no solution here, but all solution, the entire solution out of here, right? Out of time space. This is your whole mind. This is where you are home from, literally the other side. You're receiving and downloading every moment the entire whole solution of your problem of separation that you have as a human being. And that's why we are calling it the escape from this human state of separation, this human being's concept of the self. This is what we are waking up for. So you do not know what your body is, but you believe it to be real because you say, I can touch it with my hands, and vice versa. You say, what I cannot touch or see with my body's hands and eyes, like joining with my beloveds in one soul, one spirit, like joining in the light, traveling beyond the stars, is most likely to be unreal unless someone can prove otherwise to me. Those are the arguments within the human conceptual mind, isn't it? You know it well. You have never questioned the reality of your perceptual senses. The perception of touch is often the cornerstone of your belief that all the world you perceive is real for you. Well, I'm going to leave it for today with that. And it still goes on, and we have still more to say about, and we'll come back to the rope snake experience and to see what different perspectives we can have and can develop in that new way of seeing. And so the cornerstones of our belief systems on the level of perception, it is of course the seeing but also the touching, like if you can say, well, I can touch this body, so that means it is real. It has become a cornerstone, and so that needs of course a transformation and undoing practice, a practice in which we perceive ourselves in the light and only in the light. And that is available right here in our connection. And I'm as you in truth an emissary of that light of heaven that we offer to each other and to the entire world. And so welcome. There's no accident that you are here listening to me, and I'm eternally grateful to join with you and to recognize my own self and the oneness of our one self with you and within my own mind. So thank you, my brother in light, my true self. And here are the last few more sounds of that song as we started out this class, the angel song from Mitch. Bye bye.
Of what can never end.